Hello and welcome to the Becoming Mindful podcast. Today we are starting a new 3-episode series and we want to talk about how mindfulness can lead to change and is a catalyst for change. I am Maria.
And I am Jackie, and we are Becoming Mindful.
All right, welcome everyone. I think we want to start off the episode as usual with a little practice.
Yeah, just do a little coming into the moment practice. So wherever you are, find a comfortable seat. An invitation to close your eyes if that feels good for you. If not, you can take a soft gaze. Just take a few deep breaths into your belly. Feel the whole belly expand on the inhale. And take a full, complete exhale. As you do, start to settle into your seat. And let your mind begin to settle. Let go of whatever you're doing before this podcast. Let go of whatever you need to do after the podcast. Simply be here now. Take a few breaths to give yourself permission to do this. In this moment, all you need to do is breathe and be. Notice what comes up if there's any discomforts. Send your breath to any tension in your body and try to release it. And if any thoughts come up and try to distract you from what you're trying to focus on, just notice them without judgment and gently let them go and bring yourself back into focus. Become intentional with where you place your attention. Let's take 3 more rounds of breath here together. As you finish up your last breath, begin to open your eyes if they were closed. Come back into the moment. Try to hold on to that presence and stay here with us for this discussion. Thank you for joining me in that.
Thank you for leading us in that.
All right, so this is a cool topic. I like it. How does mindfulness create change? Because it was a big theme is a big theme in my life. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and how that maybe also differs from other change, right? Because one of the things I was thinking about when I was doing my notes or thoughts about this topic was, if we really think about it, change is happening all the time. So it doesn't really need mindfulness for change, because change is always happening. That's the only constant, is change, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything's changing all the time, if we want it or not. if we do anything
Yeah.
or not.
I guess,
Right?
mindfulness would be more letting that happen and
Yeah.
kind of getting out of the way almost. When we try to control change and force change, that's when we run into friction and maybe not the desired outcomes that we want. And I don't mean passivity and a lack of responsibility or participation, but we're all here and we have a role, and stepping up and being in that role in a mindful way is kind of nature's way, the way, the
Mm-hmm.
organic way. But our
Yeah.
society has built up a lot of artificial, or yeah, I guess artificial is a good word for it. Artificial expectations and goals and things that we push for and strive for and try to shoehorn that get really complicated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that too. I think the mindfulness practice gives you the ability to give space for it to unfold naturally and maybe fall
Yeah.
into the way that it's supposed to fall in, or that
Yeah.
is more of a integrated and holistic way. If you're thinking about mindfulness, the connection, mind, body, spirit, thinking about being in the now and also being aware, the awareness that you get, compared to, pushing for a certain change or striving for a certain change without the mindfulness. It's kind of like you're trying to reroute the river and inadvertently maybe flood something and kill another habitat, right? That
Mm-hmm.
was in, harmony with the river, in balance with the river, but now there's a conflict, right? You have some action and you have a consequence to it. And I think that we often, in our society just do stuff and then without being clear what the consequences, and oftentimes we can't. You can't know what the consequence is going to be. So it's really
Mm-hmm.
more about and I think that's what mindfulness brings us, is the way of being, the way of acting, the way of just being able to sit there and let things be, that allows, I think, the more balanced outcome to come to play, whatever that may be.
Yeah, absolutely. When there's a lot of friction, I think there's a reason for it. We're, trying to force something that's not, like you said, like the natural way. You try to reroute the river and nature will find its way back. It'll find the way that it wants to go. Nature's such a great example of it because it persists always. You talk about like the idea that if any part of an ecosystem went extinct, it would throw off everything in the ecosystem except for people. If people went extinct, everything would kind of flourish because we're going so against the grain. And it adds so much complexity to just living, just trying to be. And what would it be like if we created a society that was built on mindfulness and not trying to force any particular person's goals, but rather a more ecological, equitable kind of mindful approach? Because, like you said, when we slow down and we stop trying to force things, we can take a more holistic approach. You can be more mindful of all the other factors, all the other players, all the other things it's going to affect. And I feel like that's where gut feeling comes from, where you're like, this just doesn't feel right because in our brains are so intelligent and can bring in all of those different factors, but it's hard to materialize all of them. And I'm not suggesting that we create a society based on gut feelings, but I think that's where that comes from,
It,
internal mechanisms.
yeah, and that's what I think too is, and you're saying we don't want to build a society based on gut feeling, but I think it needs to be also based on gut feeling.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Hmm.
like, again, the holistic approach. You have higher brain
Yeah.
functions, you have lower brain functions, you have your body even serves that as part of your brain as well in
Hmm.
certain ways, right?
Yeah.
So all of that we can't dismiss to just think about thought. Some things that we call gut feelings are essentially just mechanisms in your body that are fast and not necessarily we're not necessarily able to put them into a thought, right? Because
Right.
it's just a different way that we don't necessarily understand yet.
Right. And when we
Um,
ignore that and we're just going on logic or numbers or whatever the
mhm,
reasoning is, or rationality, I guess, then we miss a very human element of what's going on, I
yeah,
mean,
and
when we
not
look
just
at,
human. I mean, just a
yeah, I guess I
living
mean human
being.
by like being
Yes,
like,
yes,
yeah, like a piece of
mm-hmm,
nature. We're a part of nature and we
right,
ignore that so often in pursuit of other
mm-hmm,
goals. Our society just really values rational thinking and really disrespects that other element, that a mindful element or a consideration of the
mm-hmm,
greater world. And by greater world, I mean all of the people in it, but also the environments that support us, the
mm-hmm,
animals, the plants, the earth, just everything.
right. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it kind of brings me back to a thing you said earlier. Where you said, if humans weren't there, nature would be thriving, but we need nature to be thriving. It is like that right now. I think it is like that right now just because the way we do not have an holistic approach anymore to being in
Yeah.
our current society. But I think in general, and it reminded me of the book Braiding Sweetgrass, I don't think
Uh,
that's true because we are part of nature. Yeah. So I think there is a way of being for humans that is integrated with nature in a way where there's a mutual flourishing, a reciprocity, right? What
yeah.
like Robin Wall Kimmerer described in her book. And I think that way of being comes back again to mindfulness,
Hmm.
to living a life with mindfulness. At
Yeah.
least that's my thought on that.
That book is such a great example of what we could be. People were thriving on this land for so long before Europeans got here. We got here and brought over what you'd call modern civilization and realize, I think modern civilization has this idea that we can control nature and it's here to serve us instead of, like you said, a reciprocity where we are a part of nature. It's not a resource for us. I mean, it is, but we're also a resource for it. It has to be back and forth,
Mm-hmm.
or it dies, you know, in a
Yeah.
figurative and a literal sense. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of reminded me of, how in nature documentaries something bad happens to the animals or something, and usually the team they don't do anything, right? They don't interfere
Right.
because they're like, oh, we can't interfere with nature. That's the natural
Yeah.
world, and it happens there where it happens, and we don't interfere. And that always, always struck me wrong as a child, and and I'm always like, well, but why? We
Right.
interfere in bad ways, but we don't interfere in good ways. How does that make any sense?
Totally. I like to think of it that way too. I think this was after I read Silent Spring, which is an incredible book about the effects that chemicals have on nature. And it was written by Rachel Carson in the 50s, I think, and she was so ahead of her time. But regardless, we are arguably the most intelligent species on the earth, depending on how you want to define intelligence. But we have the ability and the know-it-all to really make a huge effect on the planet, obviously. And that's an incredible opportunity to help other species that need help. We're able to
Mm-hmm.
create such drastic changes to our environment. And like you said, we've used that power for destruction. If we flip that and put the same kind of economic resources toward positive change and helping our environment flourish, it's in, it's the possibilities are endless. I think it's like Neil deGrasse Tyson who always says this, but we're talking about terraforming Mars. And if we can terraform Mars, we should first be able to fix our atmosphere here in
Right.
on Earth,
Right.
before
Right.
we go try to create an environment we can live in on Mars. How about we create an environment we can live in here?
Right.
Um,
Why do you want to create a second Earth when you have a first one? You
that
just-
needs our help,
yeah.
but that's part of mindfulness too, when you can stop and look at what we're doing and really take in the effects of it, can start to see where our efforts should be going, where we could actually have a return on an investment that is quality of life, quality of life for everyone, for everything.
For
And it's
everything.
so
Yeah.
possible.
Right. Right. It is so possible. Um, I think, there's so many. I think there's also psychological um, traumas and effects of traumas and coping mechanisms that stand in the way of that, I feel. And mindfulness helps us kind of see past them. And it comes back to, what we've read with radical acceptance is
Mm,
there are things that we're not doing right, that our ancestors have not done right, that are, other people not doing right. But, you know, getting past the blame game or defending, you know, being on the defense against others or too blaming towards others. I think
mhm.
that's one of the whole non-judgmental part of mindfulness that I feel has such a big impact, not only to heal ourselves, right? To heal our own traumas and coping mechanisms that are not correct, to allow ourselves to accept what's happening, There's going to be, bad things happening to you. There's going to be suffering. That's just how it is.
Mhm.
Because everyone, at some point dies or gets sick or disasters happen. It is not something that will go away. But I think it also helps with being in community and interacting with other people
Yeah.
in a way. If you have disagreements, like we've had on topics, to not have that become a fight, to be, to still be in a way where you can respect each other and value the other person's opinion, right?
Be curious, not judgmental.
Yeah, be curious and let, those things be. Not, you know, your way isn't necessarily the wrong way, and you also don't have to feel shame when someone disagrees with you, right?
Right. Right. We get so rigid in some of our identities and so so inflexible, and to be called out as wrong or as something you did wasn't perfect, or maybe we should do it in a better way. Maybe there's a better way to do things or a different way. But we get really defensive. And one other
Right.
thing that you said was that suffering is going to happen. You come back to the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, and the first noble truth is that suffering is inevitable. Suffering happens, and that's the way that it's translated into English. But another way to translate suffering in the Four Noble Truths is change, and that change is inevitable, and change is always going to happen. We can't not change. And we interpret that as suffering in a lot of ways because we want to hold on to our comfort and what we
Mm-hmm.
know and,
And things
not,
we were able to do before and
yeah,
maybe now
right.
can't anymore, right?
Oh man, aging. I know I'm still young, but I'm not in my 20s anymore. That humility starts to seep in. Imagine if like all of our leaders, our decision makers had humility and were able to bring in. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
look at the science of climate change and how resistant we are to it. It is literally an existential threat to every single thing on this planet. And
Mm-hmm.
people are resisting even listening
Mm-hmm.
to it because of they're so entrenched in the goal of economic returns.
Can. Yeah. I mean, at
Just
this
see
point,
it.
there is definitely certain things that we can't reverse anymore. But,
Right.
again, that's a,
But there's a path
you
forward.
can, there's a path forward and you can accept these things the way they are. The species that are extinct, they're extinct. So, for
They're gone.
example, but I think that's one of the things is like the dwelling on the past and also holding on, right? Holding on to
Yes.
what, to an identity, to a state of what's going on,
Or a
resisting
community.
change. Yeah, just in general. Yeah, resisting change. And so why climate change is even worse for people to grapple with because it's not even it's a change that's it's just happening to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they feel even more out of control. So most people they use one of those coping mechanisms, which maladaptive coping mechanism, which is denial. If you
I
don't
think
think
though,
about it, if you don't believe
yeah,
in
if I
it,
don't
it's going away.
I think one big part of it is community, and that people find so like community is so important to people. It is such an important part of us being a social animal.
Mm-hmm.
And when your whole community is saying, you know, deny climate change, it's not okay to talk about it, it's not okay to accept it, going against that means going against your social structure, going against your support systems, going against your friends, your family, your everything that you know is truth. And that's really, really difficult for the human brain to accept because
Right.
we need community. Like it's a
Yeah,
need.
we can't survive on our own. So our whole being is geared towards being in in a society, in a community, and not being ostracized, right? Or
And I think,
ostracizing yourself, right?
yeah, but that's where individual mindfulness comes in when you start to look at the 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 messaging that you're subjecting yourself to. What messages are you having fed to yourself? That's what's going to create your reality. We could create this a community of trying to solve this problem, but we have this polarized society that we're on one side or the other, and we're so entrenched in it. It's so hard to come together, you know?
Right. Yeah, I think it's also a part of just the human mind that it's really hard to break open identities and people
Yes.
and the ego loves to create an identity and cling to it. So
Hmm.
if I have this identity now, I and one big way of establishing and fomenting your identity is the setting it off against another identity of saying
Yes.
I'm this and I'm different
And
from
not that.
this
Yep.
and not that exactly.
Yeah. It's a
And
good way to
humans
draw
have
a
done
line.
that all the time throughout
Mm-hmm.
history. It's like this
Mm-hmm.
tribe had these thoughts and the neighboring tribe had the other thoughts because we're
Right.
not them.
And my way has
Even
kept
if
me
they
alive.
lived.
Yeah, like my way is working for me, so yours must be wrong. Instead of having the mindfulness to find empathy and realize that another person's experience is different from yours and they're going to have a different approach and different reasons. And that's not wrong. You have to learn to live in harmony with that, not
Right,
against that. Like,
right, right.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's a long it's hard. I mean, even in societies, like the Native American societies where we were talking before that lived so much more in harmony with nature and with kind of the goal of humanity of living a nice life, right? Like
Yeah.
that's all you want.
Yeah.
Like be with your family and the least amount of suffering and it's all good. Even them even then in those societies you had those tendencies where
Mhm.
I'm this tribe and you're this tribe and we're different and we have different philosophies. So
Right. But shouldn't that be what modern society is recognizing that and being mindful of it and creating a harmony with that? Like we have the ability to create a civilization, a society of billions of people. Can we make it harmonious? I think we can. I think we can design
right,
a
right,
harmonious living for everyone that is equitable and strives to make the best quality of life for everything that lives on this planet. We're smart enough to do that.
we are.
We can.
Right. And let's circle back to mindfulness and how it catalyzes change. I think you have kind of these circles, right? You have yourself, your integration with your body, mind, spirit, right? The whole package. And being more mindful. That already creates change, I think, on a
Mm,
local level within you.
absolutely. Yeah.
You are going to change. You're going to be a different person. You're going to tackle things differently and in a way that reduces suffering.
Mm-hmm.
If you can, like we talk with radical acceptance, if you can do that, it's not going to feel like suffering to you. You're not going to be in pain as much
Yeah.
because you can accept this change and
Right.
let it be. So
Right.
it's not like the mindfulness triggers the change, but it allows the change and allows you to live with the change and not go against it.
Yeah, it softens all those hard edges that we make, whether it's
Right.
between each other, like you're saying, or whether it's for these like blinded goals that we're looking for, or whether it's any ideologies that we've attached ourselves to and
Right.
allowed ourselves to be, you know, taken on a ride with,
Mm.
when really, mindfulness helps us regain autonomy, I think, where I'm not this label, I'm not that label, I'm a human being with all these other human beings, and we're all trying
Mm-hmm.
to live together here. We're all trying to thrive, right? And there's a whole world out there that's there to support me if I let myself be a part of it.
Right. So yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like it kind of starts with the change within you, but I think
Huh?
once you practice more, you expand it
Yeah.
within you, but then you also expand it to other people.
Yeah.
Because how do you act towards other people? How do you
Oh,
listen to other
100%.
people?
Yeah.
How do you connect with other people? So the empathy, the
Yeah.
the the mindful listening, and just how the way you appear and are inclusive and allow others to have different opinions and then they feel seen, right? And then it's like
Yes.
this whole ripple effect that yeah, this just
It
expands through everything, right?
it creates healing. It's a tool for
Mm-hmm.
healing, and we are a very broken world. One of the things that is has been an incredible movement, I'll call it, lately, and I know we've talked about this a lot, is healing generational trauma. What behaviors have we passed down generation after generation? Someone needs to heal that, and there's a whole generation of people doing that right now, and using the internet and other tools of connection to heal and mindfully take new steps forward in a different way. And that's been incredible. That's a
Yes.
great sign of mindfulness permeating our whole
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah, just think about the gentle parenting stuff we were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Different ways of parenting and how that inevitably changes things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Inevitably, because
And, yeah.
how you were brought up and what happened in your childhood is such a big deal later in life. And it makes a big difference of how you interact in the world and what you do for and in the world when you have either a traumatic childhood or a very supportive and supportive childhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
It makes such a big difference because then you don't have to heal from your childhood. So this whole
Right.
time of having to heal from your childhood is gone, where you
Mm-hmm.
can do things and where you can, really make a difference in the world.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely so important. And then the other thing I think that goes on top of that is not only the healing, but also like the vision of what do we want to create in life. And we've talked
Mm.
about this with the solar punk movement, right? It's like this:
Yeah.
what can we see? What can we? What do we want? And how do we come to a harmonious, inclusive style of living that really works with the environment and us?
Right. And
So
it's a very hard question to answer because our lives are our world is changing so quickly. It's not about like finding an answer and then we're done. It's like we need to find a way to move with how everything changes, how
right,
and be
it's like a
adaptive and be
cycle.
flexible.
It's like
Yeah.
right.
We can't just be rigid and say this is how it's going to be and we're done now. We have to constantly be reacting, and that's the mindfulness part. That's being here and taking the world as it is in this moment and responding to it. I think we're
Responding.
trying.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that. Reminds me of something Sadhguru said about responsibility, and like rephrasing it as responsibility is the ability to respond.
Hmm.
Going back to the word, and it's
Yeah.
like, how do we respond? If we respond in a mindful way, and obviously, response doesn't mean that you have to do something about everything, but if you can
Right.
see that responsibility is the ability to respond, suddenly you're responsible for the whole world. But it doesn't mean like it's a burden or something. It's like, in which way can you respond? Whatever way you can, right?
Right. That's a really beautiful concept that I love in yoga philosophy and several Eastern philosophies, I should say, is the concept of dharma, which is to find your innate qualities, what makes you uniquely you, and then also seeing the world exactly how it is with your eyes open, and then finding the connection between the two. Where does the world need you to serve or respond? That's what we need more of instead of a lot of top down authoritative kind of design of our lives has
Right.
led
More like a
to,
bot of.
yeah, has it's led to a lot of needs being unmet and a lot of disharmony with ourselves, with nature, with everything. I mean, mindfulness restores that autonomy again. Like it brings it back. It gives you a sense of self and a sense of community. Like you find your individual place within everything. It's
Right.
it's very magical.
Yeah, and I think it also extends to not only finding your own place and how you can serve and bring yourself into the equation, but it also lets you find ways how the community can give back to you.
Yeah.
Like being able to ask for help, for
Yes.
example.
Feeling supported.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so incredible if you stop to think about all of the things that are supporting you being here right now, all the way down to the air that the trees are cleaning for you to breathe. It's just incredible. There are so
Mm-hmm.
many things supporting you and here for you. And having gratitude for that, I mean, you really have to stop and let that permeate you. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, you have to be in the now. You have to be present to be able
Mm-hmm.
to see that
And
all
the
around
only
you.
way, once you start to appreciate that there's clean water and you have to have that, you'll start to respect water. You'll start to respect trees. And same thing with our fellow humans or the animals that create the ecosystems around us. We have to be mindful and appreciate them and see the symbiotic or the reciprocity of that relationship to then create lives that respect that whole ecosystem, that whole thing that we're a part of, instead of living in a silo like I feel like we often
Mm-hmm.
do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it goes further than that. Not only do you suddenly appreciate everything, every tree, every plant, and you can see their suffering. I think that is another part is you see their suffering, and a lot of people are at that point already that they see the suffering, but then it overwhelms them because
Yeah.
it's too much pain. But if you look at suffering from a mindful perspective, do you see that what what you feel, what hurts you, seeing that is really your love. It's because you have empathy and love and gratitude
Mm-hmm.
and appreciation for all
Yeah.
of that. All of the
Yeah.
people, all of the plants and animals. And that is what is painful. That is the feeling, right? So
Mm-hmm. But I mean,
if you reframe it like that and look at it from a mindful perspective, you can see like it doesn't have to overwhelm you. It's because
yeah.
you love everything and you want to, help.
And looping that back to mindfulness creating change, then that is what motivates you. That is what takes you out into the world, knowing the suffering that's out there and knowing where what needs help and what needs just compassion, just what needs acknowledgement,
Mm-hmm.
then that's how you show up in the world. That's how you show up in your relationships, at your job, as a parent, as a consumer. That's going to permeate through all of your choices and behaviors, and that's how it creates change. And it's kind of like little tiny steps all along the way, but it's those are really important steps. Like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. How was that about each drop fills the ocean or something?
Yeah, I don't remember, but yeah, I mean, the ocean is full of individual drops of rain, and you
Right.
need them all to make the ocean. But
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. I think we've come to a point of ending this
Well,
episode.
we're turning to the great Sharon Salzberg for some additional wisdom on this topic. We are reading Real Change by Sharon Salzberg. We both started it. It's already incredible. I love it. But it's all about how mindfulness can be a catalyst for change, and she's incredible. I love her so much.
And she writes very well as well. So I'm
She
I'm really
does.
enjoying it. I'm halfway through the first chapter, but enjoying
It's
it.
it's it's good. If you need to clean up your socials or anything, I would suggest following Sharon Salzberg. Like, I love seeing her posts. They are so positive and so thoughtful, and they always make me pause. So, I mean, social media is a questionable medium sometimes, but follow someone like Sharon Salzberg, and it'll brighten up your feed for sure. That's my
Mm-hmm.
advice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with that, I think our assignment would be for in the time between this episode and the next, if you want to also pick up the book and read it. I have it right here. Real Change.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to us while you're reading it with any insights or
Yeah.
or comments.
Yeah. Check out your local library and see if it's there.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, yeah, let us know how you feel about it. And then next month, we're going to review the book.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us today. As always, please follow us on socials at Becoming Mindful Podcast. Reach out with any questions or comments or any conversations you'd like to have with us. We'd love to hear your feedback. But otherwise, enjoy Real Change, and we'll be back in a month to talk about it. Until then, be well.